as the sun rises a little earlier each day and the cherry trees in our neighborhood fill with fruit, our 3 years in Europe are coming to a close. With only a few weeks left of this European family adventure, I find myself thinking back over all that we've seen and done and learned. Highs like winter paddleboarding in Barcelona, nighttime tobogganing in Slovakia, and hiking by herds of sheep along the south coast of Wales together. Eating dark chocolate gelato with whipped cream in Rome and caramelized banana oatmeal in London. Watching fireworks explode above our Croatian balcony on New Year's Eve and Hungarian light shows at the Christmas markets of Budapest in the frosty air. Lows like croup in Nuremberg and COVID in Split, scarlet fever in Tuscany, a broken arm in Spain, and a CAT scan in an Austrian emergency room. Lows of loneliness that could creep in unexpectedly, anxiety that could catch hold in that moment when I'd realized just how little backup was there if we hit a rough patch. So here we are, getting ready to say goodbye, and I just wanted to share a little of this life abroad. Maybe you're thinking of coming overseas yourself, or maybe you've tuned in a bit to our adventure and you're interested to hear how the story ends. Today on the podcast, let's talk about the good stuff, the medium stuff, and the tough stuff of these 3 years overseas. Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers looking for more. More creativity, more engagement, more joy, and no more scripted curriculum, lesson planning ruts, or boring book lists. I'm Betsy Potash, and I'm honored you're trusting me to help. You're not alone on this creative journey anymore. People often ask us, why Slovakia? Even our Slovak friends seem shocked at first that we choose to leave the U.S. to make our way to the city of Bratislava. Really, they'd say, brows lifted. Slovakia? But from the beginning, we've liked it here. People have been kind to us. The old town is stunning and never ever crowded. We love the way restaurants have play areas for kids, the way kids can wander the neighborhood on their own without fear, the way family life is prioritized within company work schedules. When my husband opens his email inbox on a Monday, his colleagues usually haven't emailed him over the weekend. So cool, right? Maybe our favorite thing about it has been the location. Bratislava is just an hour from Vienna, 2 hours from Budapest, 3 from Prague, and within a day's drive of places like Slovenia, Croatia, and even northern Italy. We've been so glad to road trip to the Swiss mountains and Tuscany, to see the yellow flower fields of the Czech Republic, and to snorkel the blue lagoon on the Croatian coast. Our family has a lot of road trip traditions at this point, from car bingo to family podcasts, games of password to an endlessly growing playlist of each family member's favorite songs, combined into a playlist we call On the Road Again. We've also loved our children's school, which has given us our first major exposure to a system outside the American take on education. At school, they have a half-hour break every morning to go outside, as well as a whole hour at lunch, and I think this is amazing. The youngest children at the school spend a morning every week at forest school in the mountains nearby, and the kids head seasonally to classes in gymnastics, swimming, or ice skating off campus as part of gym. They don't have homework all the way through primary until secondary, and a ton of their learning is project-based. We've attended our daughter's trash and show, in which first graders created full outfits made from recycled materials and then narrated each other's adorable marches down the catwalk. And we also saw her class's hour-long musical, complete with sets, costumes, and songs about a village of brave people who confronted a mountain dragon. We've listened to our son's stories of his class's week-long trip to the Austrian mountains, as well as many other adventures off campus. Then there's the food. Our children will probably always be nostalgic for their favorite Slovak foods. The Slovak take on mac and cheese, which is a combination of tiny potato dumplings, sheep cheese, and specks of thick-cut bacon. They love it. The bags of chips shaped like teddy bears called palm bears. They love those too. The oval slabs of chewy cheese that melt gently on the grill. My daughter has developed a love for jelly straws, brightly colored lychee and mango puddings, and kimbap after sharing many of these with her friends at school from Korea, and I'm sure we will be looking for them wherever we move next. Then there's the incredible pizza we've tried, discovering, surprisingly, our very favorites in Barcelona and a tiny Slovak mountain town rather than Rome or Florence. The gelato here, there, and everywhere, of course, has been amazing. And the pastries, caramel-dipped cinnamon rolls in Prague, ham and cheese croissants in Budapest, palmeras de chocolate in Spain, jammy scones with clotted cream in England. Discovering new foods and new twists on old foods has been such a gift throughout these 3 years. We've got a map now of Europe on the wall of the upstairs landing and a piece of paper next to it with our travel ABCs. Every time we've returned from a trip, we've added the name of the city and country to the ABCs, and then the kids have drawn a new dot or star onto the map. Over 3 years, we've been able to visit 17 countries together: the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Italy, Croatia, Slovenia, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, France, Hungary, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Spain, England, Wales, Denmark, Iceland, and Turkey. Though our 8-year-old still tends to mix up cities and countries and memories, I love to think that she'll remember seeing the Leaning Tower of Pisa lean, looking out over the city of Mostar from its minaret high above a twisty blue river, climbing the city walls of Dubrovnik, staring up at the Sistine Chapel ceiling, and wandering over the Charles Bridge in Prague in all weathers. I hope our son will remember cliff jumping into Lake Bohine, seals popping up between light blue icebergs in Iceland's Jökulsárlón National Park, staring down into the Colosseum, watching the Three Kings Parade whirl by in Barcelona, and hiking the Seven Sisters Cliffs in England. I also hope they'll remember going to school with kids from Serbia, Iran, Korea, Japan, Slovakia, England, and so many more places, going to the mall with them, playing laser tag with them, swapping Cheez-Its for rose puddings, making friends on the playgrounds of new countries, and figuring out how to hang out, even if that means using the Google Translate app or a soccer ball and lots of gestures to talk to each other. Okay, let's talk about the lows a little bit. Coming to live abroad is a lot of work on the front end, so it helps if you really want to do it and you really feel committed. There are documents galore to have sent to you, notarized, and then mailed to various offices and bureaus. When we arrived here, we had to immediately go to this office called the Foreign Police to get our Slovak identity cards. But luckily for us, our husband's school was able to hire a consultant to shepherd us through what we hear is otherwise a very difficult process. Getting a car insurance, health insurance, car repairs, doctor's appointments, vaccines, help for problems with the house, etc., pretty much always requires help from colleagues, neighbors, and friends who understand the system better than we do. On the one hand, it's amazing to have so many kind people help us with things, and we're really grateful. On the other hand, it's challenging not to be able to get things done yourself. Small things like getting a haircut, having your winter tires put on, finding a new product at the store, calling a restaurant to ask if they'll deliver, or picking up a prescription take way more energy and effort, even courage, than they would at home. Similarly, making friends in a new country can feel challenging. We've been lucky to make some friends through our children's school, and our neighbors have been super friendly and kind to us, but I always feel like we're imposing on them as they help us with things and kindly switch over to speak in our language since our Slovak is so basic. We've spent a lot more time on our own as a family than we probably would in our own country. Sometimes that's amazing, like when we're playing living room hockey after dinner or bocce or croquet in the yard. Other times when our kids are really, really bothering each other, I wish they could go outside and play with a friend in the neighborhood, or that we knew a few more families with kids their age that we could have over. Probably the biggest difficulty for us in living here has been healthcare, which I've shared before. In the end, we figured out how to make it work, which was mainly by driving over to Vienna for everything. We found a wonderful American pediatrician there and a fantastic private hospital, but boy, we definitely had some pitfalls until we figured all that out. The kids have been sick a ton with all kinds of illnesses that are common here and not very common at home. My son also turned out to have a strong reaction to the water in Bratislava, something that had us in and out of doctors' offices and courses of antibiotics for months before we finally figured out that we just needed to switch him to bottled water. Symptoms in the kids like 104-degree fevers, choking, coughs, and terrible stomach pain have definitely given me medical anxiety here, as I never know exactly what my next step will be if things get serious when we're in Germany, Croatia, Spain, or even here at home in Bratislava. Of course, I didn't love it when they were sick in the US either, but at least I felt like I knew what to do. Okay, and now a few mediums. These things are up in the air, right? There are tricky and good things about them. Feeding the family overseas, for example, is both awesome and tricky. On the one hand, what a delight to explore all the restaurants, bakeries, and gelaterias of Europe, as I've already said. On the other hand, everything at the grocery store is different, and so is the oven, and so is the stove. About half the recipes I'd normally make for my family just aren't really possible with the ingredients available. Meat cuts, cheeses, and dairy all look different here, and sometimes I'm really not sure if I'm putting plain yogurt or sour cream into my batter. There is no vanilla extract, so I bring that from home, or in the end, I did find some at like a very fancy grocery store. Even though it was super expensive, I was delighted to find it. Good luck buying chicken soup stock, shredded cheddar, or yeast as I know it. There's no cracker aisle, and cereal isn't popular. Milk comes in a box and doesn't have to be refrigerated until it's opened. Individual snack-sized portions of children's foods are not available for packing in school lunches. Cookies like Oreos come in packages of 8 instead of packages of 50. I don't mean that any of this is bad. It's certainly not. It's just different. People make lovely food here all the time. We make lovely food here all the time. It's just been a process of adaptation. And we found that feeding the family and packing school lunches is definitely more challenging. Then there's the challenge of being far from family and that general sense of backup that comes with being at home. Last year, at one point, my husband was away on a work trip, and I cut myself on a rusted piece of metal. Ugh. I panicked, trying to figure out if I had had a tetanus shot, not really able to check my medical paperwork back at home. Then I was wondering, how am I going to get one? Who's going to take care of the kids if I have to drive to the hospital? Each step was way more complicated than it would have been in the US, and I find that that is just true for a lot of things. On the other hand, it's been great fun to welcome friends and family to visit us here, and it's so lovely to get to host them, show them what we love about Europe and about Bratislava, and share the good things about the experience. We also have found it lovely how expats from around the world share support and recommendations through Facebook groups, WhatsApp threads, and even a Christmas cookie exchange. Then there's the issue of language. We have repeatedly realized that we are extremely privileged and lucky that English is our first language as we've lived here and traveled elsewhere. Almost everyone we've met has had a little bit of English, even if it's just to politely say that they don't speak English, in which case we turn to a translation app. But still, there's a level of distance from your original self when every conversation you have outside of your family is with someone who's speaking to you in their second language. There are wonderful rewards to it. You get to learn about other cultures and perspectives, you gain understanding and awareness, but there's also something a bit lonely about it. Never understanding a word that's being said around you in coffee shops and crowds, always wondering if your joke made any sense or your story was understood. Okay, so what? So maybe you're wondering, do I recommend that you come abroad to teach? That you move your family to another country? Maybe it's something you've dreamed about, like we did, but you're just not sure if it's right for you. In the end, I'd be lying if I said it's not a mixed experience. Living abroad can't be all pictures of gelato on Instagram, dinner parties with friends from around the world, and cliffside hikes in Wales. It's complicated, and honestly, it gets dramatically easier with practice. At this point in my life, I've lived in 4 other countries besides the US. In college, I lived in Salamanca in Spain for a semester. During graduate school, I did a program in Oxford in England. My husband and I taught abroad in Sofia, Bulgaria before we had kids, and then after we had kids, after they had grown a bit, we moved here to Bratislava. Each time I've moved somewhere new, I've been more familiar with this intricate process of finding solutions and support. And also, I've learned how to cope in ways that make me feel comfortable when things do feel really challenging and overwhelming. I've also learned how to have great travel adventures during breaks, which is, there is a learning curve. At this point, I can Google Translate instructions in any language on my food packaging. I can turn on a European stove. I can sort of translate kilometers to miles, Celsius to Fahrenheit, and liters to cups in my head. I can navigate the British metro and the Paris airport. I can find gelato in any city. I can recognize the European version of Tylenol. I can even spot a clear jellyfish in the sea before it gets too close to me. But at first, I couldn't do any of those things, and each one required a new, different kind of effort. And those are just a few examples of the many things to be learned on a day-to-day basis. Was it worth it to me? Was it worth it for us to have the adventures of these last 3 years? Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad and grateful that we could come and share this adventure with our children. And for me, 3 years was the perfect amount of time. I'm ready to come home, though I'm sure it won't be long before we plan another overseas trip. It will just probably be for weeks instead of years next time. Thanks so much for joining me today to reflect on these last 3 years of life overseas. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay creative. Have you been wondering how to get started with student podcasting? Would you like to get your students thriving inside this 21st century medium without feeling worried about tech issues and platform choices? I'm now opening the doors to my free summer workshop, Camp Creative. Over the course of 3 days, I'll give you everything you need to banish those fears over podcasting technology, platforms, and privacy issues, and start seeing your students thrive with creative podcasting projects instead. You'll get my favorite models and listening activities for helping students connect to podcasts before they create their own, done-for-you curriculum for launching your first project, and the easiest tools and platforms for recording and sharing student work in a safe way. Just as in Camp Creative's past, each day's training, packed with resources and tips, will arrive in your inbox, ready for you to explore when you have time. You'll find the link to sign up in the show notes over at nowsparkcreativity.com. I can't wait to work with you during this free summer session.